Well, good evening. I think we are live. Welcome to another Our Happy Divorce live stream. My name is Ben Healthfun. I am joined. There was some rumors going around, but I just want to squash them, that you and I are still getting along because you have not been here for 5 weeks.
Sorry.
So can you set the record straight? We still have a happy divorce.
We still have a happy divorce.
Okay.
We're still sitting in the same room together.
We are still sitting in the same room. We can still tolerate each other.
Quarantined together.
She's wearing her pajamas today.
I am wearing my pajamas.
She's going to kill me for having everybody say that. But we are always joined and lucky to have Kate Anthony and Susan Guthrie. You can find both. Susan's podcast is a Divorce and Beyond podcast. She has over 30 years as a top family attorney and mediator. I don't have time to go through all her accomplishments. She's the real deal. And then, of course, we have Kate, divorce coach. She helps women decide that very tough decision of whether they should stay or whether they should go. She's also the host of the award-winning podcast, the Divorce Survival Podcast. So, my girls.
Hi, everyone.
It's been a while.
I know.
I feel like we have some catching up to do. Before we start talking about money, which I did try so hard, and I don't know if anybody can hear it, but I'm going to try.
No, now I don't hear it. Oh, there it is.
No.
There it was.
So I worked really hard to get a trigger, because that's what Howard Stern does. That's what everybody does, and I got a sound effect, and it's not working.
Delayed.
It's going through another speaker. But anyways, what have you guys been up to? I know, Susan, you had a little vacation.
Yeah, it was nice. We took off for Michigan, hung out by the
Hometown.
lake.
Go Blue.
We liked it so much, we're going back next week.
Are you?
Yeah.
And it was a nice, not socially did, but it was in the middle of nowhere, and you guys drove?
Pretty much, yeah.
Nice.
Stayed in the woods, looked at the lake, didn't talk to anyone. It was great.
Nice.
That
Sounds perfect. And then, Kate, we haven't seen you because you flaked on us last time. You pulled a Nikki. And just said you were too emotionally exhausted and didn't want to have anything to do with us.
I love you so much, and I felt so bad, but I was literally like, I was catatonic on my couch.
And I, of course, threw the Jewish guilt all over you because that's the way I was raised.
Did you throw me under the bus on the live
stream? No, I was very upfront and straight on the podcast, but I think during the text messages I was throwing you.
Yeah, exactly. You were giving me some shit by text, but that's okay. I expect nothing less.
All right. Well, so we've talked about a couple tough topics through this whole thing, and bringing in somebody else, and the whole romance part of it. When we talked about a subject today, the other part of the hardest thing about divorce, at least for us and those who go through it, is the money part of it. So Susan's actually idea was to talk about money and divorce, and try to do it in a positive way, because just like the romance thing, it can send a divorce spiraling downhill. So Susan reached out into her network, and I know Kate knows her too, because I was listening to her podcast from like 2018 earlier.
Christina was one of my first guests on my podcast,
and I went deep. And I take this shit pretty seriously. And so Christina Lynn's a financial not public attorney. That's a financial divorce accountant, and she has her own story, and that's why I would love having her on when I read more about it. And she was a stay-at-home mom before she got divorced, and after divorce she reinvented herself and went from having nothing to creating a financial business. And so we are so pleased to have Christina Lynn join us tonight.
Come on, just try it one more time.
Come on. My screen's here. No, it doesn't work. Only we can hear it.
Cha-ching.
It's a cash register cha-ching.
Oh.
Welcome, Christina.
Yeah, I was going to say, we won't sing.
Yeah,
it should be your theme song.
Yeah.
We've tried that because, obviously Kate's "Should I Stay or Should I Go?" great Clash song, and I tried to play it one night, and then got flagged by every streaming service out there for stealing music. But you know what? Welcome to our stream. We're so glad that you could join us. and share some of your insight, not only from the financial part of it, but also a bit about your history and your story and your divorce and where it led you to what you're doing today. And if you just want to, briefly tell everybody about it. Sorry for 1 sec. If you're listening or watching, please drop questions for Christina, Susan, or Kate. You have a plethora of free counsel here, from a coach to a lawyer to a financial advisor. So use it wisely. So anyways, Christina, go ahead.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is a powerhouse team. I am just happy to be here. And this is an important topic. The money part of divorce can be very tricky. You all know that. And my job is to bring some science behind it and math and make it take the emotion out of it and look at things from a step back and give professional advice to make this process easier, because the money part just makes it so stinking complicated. Did you want me to give some background on myself?
I mean, there was so much there. Yeah. I mean, I think it's from the podcast I heard with, Kate, is you went, Nikki and I we try to express the right way. I mean, I think if anything, we had our bumps and we stepped on some landmines along the way, but we also ended up at the right place. And I think that what I heard from your story is you learned doing the wrong way, or some of the mistakes you did, and that's your share. So either way, we're all here to share experience, but right or wrong, and we still get to the same place. So
absolutely right. Yeah, I think it helps to have people come back and share their story because it gives people hope that are going through it. I don't think, at least my experience, I don't remember people being very open about their divorce story. And so people who were vulnerable enough to share their story gave me so much hope. So I'm just really happy to share my story and some of my expertise now, because I've made a career out of it, in hopes that I can help other people navigate the divorce process better than I did.
So Susan and Kate, I'll bring you into this as well. When you get divorced, I think it's fair, Christina, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you got divorced, maybe you didn't know as much about money as you know now.
Right, no.
And so, for a woman going through it and for a man too, the financial insecurity of the whole deal. And so what did you do wrong, I guess, and Kate and Susan, what you see people, your clients, maybe doing wrong in the beginning, that's, but again, we want to stay in the solution, right? So it's wrong, right, but it's also wrong towards the solution, not towards the problem. Like, I don't want you to tell people where to hide money or, how to really take the husband or the wife to
your mattress.
Under your mattress.
Under your mattress.
Is that where you did yours?
Yes, under your mattress.
I was always wondering where it went. So, Christina,
I went to my shoe closet.
You're our guest. So, maybe some things that you experience or you see people doing wrong in the beginning.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start with my story first. And that is, I was a stay-at-home mom, so completely reliant on my spouse for all things financial. And I was, of course, like all of us, I was planning to stay married forever. So I really didn't have a plan B. And I didn't know what was going on with our finances. I mean, we're all smart, right? And I'm not afraid of money, but I didn't understand where our income was coming from. I didn't know how much we made. I had really no idea what our expenses were. I had no idea what our assets were. And I certainly didn't know how to make myself financially float on my own. Because, as you get married and as your life progresses, you get new bills and you have new expenses, you have kids. I didn't know how to figure that out, this new life. I wasn't my single eating beans and rice anymore. I have kids to, pay for piano lessons now. I didn't know how to budget for that. How much does it take to pay for all this stuff? So that that was where I came from. And I fumbled through it. It was really difficult. And then I had a high net worth divorce. It was super messy. It was appealed to the state Supreme Court, set precedents in the state. So it was super duper messy. And I learned the hard way, like how to figure all this out. And then on the back end, I thought, I did not do this the right way. What is the right way to do this? Is I want other women to, and not only women, like I want people to navigate this better than I did. So I was on a mission to figure out a healthier, more efficient way to go about this. So that's where I went. I got my certification as a certified divorce financial analyst. I went to get my master's in financial planning. Got lots of more designations. I have a top designation in my industry, the certified financial planner. And now I'm getting my PhD in financial planning, and I'm doing incredible research on divorce finances that I'm super pumped about. So, I took it and ran with it because there are more efficient ways to handle getting divorced.
Right. Kate, when you see women, so I could say women. When women come.
I see women too.
Well, I know you do, but specifically because obviously there are no divorce. There are not a lot of divorce coaches out there for men because of our emotional capability. But when women, yeah, I know you're not gonna say it. But when women, come see you about the divorce, what mistakes do you see them make that either bad for them or also bad for the divorce?
Well, a couple things. That one of the things that is that Christina said is just not knowing what's going on, like having no financial power, having no idea what is actually happening in the finances with the family. So that's like number one. And so I always tell people, like, get the information, get the passwords to all of the bank accounts, make sure your name is on everything so that you have access to everything. I tell them to call Christina. I do, like all of them. I tell them to call Christina. And then the other thing that, and Christina and I talked about this on my podcast, is, I think Christina says the number one mistake that she sees women make, which I almost made, is fighting to keep a house that they can't afford. And I think, I think about how I wanted to keep my house so badly because I had this emotional attachment to it. And I ultimately didn't fight for it harder because I knew what the mortgage was. And I was like, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I knew how much my spousal support was 2 years. So like, what then? I had no idea what I was going to do or how long it was going to take me. And thank God, you guys, because I would have been screwed if I had kept that house. Screwed. And so, I'm going to let Christina speak to that. But when women come to me and they're like, I want to stay in the house and it's important and yada, 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 the first thing I say is, that is, number one, not a financially smart idea necessarily. And you need to do the research and figure that out, which Christina can talk to. But also, I don't know if I've talked to you guys about this on this live stream, but my ex had a really good point about keeping the house, which was, he said, Kate, wherever you go is home. So you can, get an apartment or, whatever. And Emmett will feel like he's home because you're there. And he said, I'm the working parent. I'm the one I already feel disenfranchised as a parent. And so if I'm in this like weird apartment or whatever, or another house, like he was going to go in an apartment.
Damn it.
But, but he said, like, for him, keeping the house meant some stability for our son. And I got to tell you, I think he was right. And that was the thing that swayed me. That was, that and the finances were the two things that swayed me about giving him the house.
Was he right in hindsight, or was he right at the moment?
Oh, well, he was right in the moment. But now with the benefit of hindsight, 11 years later.
Right, that's what I'm like.
But
at the time, did you think it was the right?
at the time when he made that argument in mediation, I immediately backed off and was like, you're right. You get it. You get the house. So at the time I was like, oh shit, that's a really compelling argument. And I also got the fresh start, by the way.
Right.
You know, I did get the fresh start. My friends would say that they would come over to my house and the energy was just like so light and fresh. Whereas the energy at my ex's house was still like, had that like, that just divorced energy.
Susan, some of the same questions, some of the same mistakes, or some of the same, I don't know, mistakes. In this sense, where they go wrong, or where it could cause, where it could be fixed. This very sensitive landmine. I think besides romance, probably the second biggest landmine for divorce.
Finances, yeah. I mean, you see all different kinds of mistakes. Unfortunately, this is the area where it's so easy to make mistakes. And it starts with, I think Christina and Kate both make a great point, with people not knowing as they go into the process what I always call it the financial pie, right? Like divorce on the financial side is truly just comes down to figuring out what your financial pie is, what's in there that needs to be divided, and then how are you going to chop that up? Who's going to get which slices of pie? But the other big mistake that I see people making, and this was a problem as a divorce attorney for clients, is where they would start slicing the pie and dividing pieces up without knowing everything that was in the pie. So they would make these pre-agreements. Oh, well, you get to keep the house, or I'm going to keep this, or you don't want anything out of my retirement. And they'd make these agreements without even knowing what the entire pie looked like. And then that causes problems, because then as you get further into it and do back up, because you have to do the quantification of the pie. And when you do that and you realize, oh, wait, maybe that doesn't work. Now it feels like you're reneging. And that is a problem I see in almost every single divorce that I do. They start talking about who gets what before they even know what there is to get. And I think Christina made a wonderful point. I mean, obviously we have a smart cookie here. I didn't even know, by the way, Christina, you could get a PhD in financial planning. So bravo to you.
She's very post-divorce overachiever.
I mean,
I'm feeling a little bad about myself right now.
Yeah.
Nikki DeBartolo with the comment. Yeah.
I mean, wow. But clearly a smart cookie, I mean, from the start, but didn't know what the finances were. And that's another thing, is it's very common in marriages to bifurcate the duties, right? Like the jobs in the household. And very often one person takes over handling the finances. In my household, it's me, because I'm never going to not know what my finances are, right? But that is something that you see all the time too. But it seems like, and Kate, I know you mentioned this in another show, when you talk to people, you tell about how to sit down and have that discussion about it, we need to get a divorce. Don't start talking about who's going to live where, who's going to get what, because that's where everybody wants to go. And it's way too early.
It is way too early. That's right. That's right. Do not have those conversations be part of the first conversation.
No, or the second, or the third.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, it's down the road.
And it is one of the things that I think people want to control, right? They're suddenly out of control. Their spouse is saying that they want a divorce and everything is now out of control. And so one of the things that they think they can control is like, okay, well, what am I going to get out of it, right? And I get the impetus, but it's not the right time.
So, one thing that I've heard talking to other guys and women for that matter is they sort of, obviously, Nikki and I, it wasn't just one day we woke up and Nikki rolled over, I rolled over and said, hey, let's get divorced. I mean, it was a build up and sort of something that happened over, a long period of time. But I hear people saying, okay, I'm trying to move money around, shift money around. How big of a mistake is that? Because you have people as smart as Christina who is going to find that money, right?
You're also lying.
Well, there's that, right?
Trying to find it, you're lying.
Right, but is that a mistake that you guys see that is, people think they're being smart about it, but really it comes back to to haunt them?
I think Christina can speak to.
Yeah.
There's always a paper trail, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if you're going to be a real stinker, like there probably are cases like that out there, but like Susan said, there's a paper trail, and you're just going to make everyone's life really
if you dig
difficult.
hard enough, you're going to find that trail.
Well, especially with our overachiever here. I mean, it's true. Which is awesome. I didn't even know you could get a PhD in financial accounting. Is it forensic accounting or financial
planning?
Planning. Okay.
Financial planning.
Mm-hmm. One thing that go ahead.
I remember like my mom saying to me at some point when I thought I was happily married, which I never thought really. But we were still together, and my mom was like, as a stay-at-home mom, you should probably like squirrel some money away. Because, like, what if? And I was like, well, first of all, that's not how I want to live my marriage. But secondly, like, we live in California. It's a 50-50 state. Anything that I squirrel away, we're just going to have to bring to the table and split anyway. So it doesn't matter whether it's in my, my personal savings account that I have created, to, squirrel money away or not. Like, all the money is going to have to be split at some point. So it doesn't make it.
Except to that point, and Christina, maybe you can talk about this. One of the things that I do actually advise clients, or did when I was doing represented work, is very often when you have a more contentious divorce, the client, the party who has access to the funds will cut off the other party's access. So you do need, in some cases, just to get through and get started with the process, a nest egg. I mean, do you see that, Christina?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, theoretically, what you're saying, Kate, is absolutely right. But during the filing the divorce process, if the person who doesn't have the reins on the finances, if they get cut off from that and they're the one who wants to get divorced, how are they going to pay a retainer for an attorney?
Totally.
And so it is, even though it's all 50-50 split in a community property state like that, it is still a good idea to have, a retirement account or a savings account in your own name.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to actually amend what I said, which is that my ex, I didn't have a contentious, I had a volatile marriage, but it was not contentious like that, where I felt like I knew that when we got divorced, we were just going to pay for it together, however, right? But it's absolutely true that if you're not, and if there is some, if you're not going to be able to pay a retainer, right? Because you get cut off from the finances, like, hell yeah, make a plan, make an early plan.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, we were talking about, sorry, I got to plug my computer in here. We were talking about like mistakes that people made. And I just wanted to point out one other big one I see that isn't really related to what we've talked about so far. And that is getting obsessed over something small, like not seeing the forest through the trees. Is that the right saying?
Yes.
Like,
exactly.
It sure is.
Okay. So for example, in a case with a lot of assets, I see, for example, one party or one spouse just become obsessed with like a $2,000 bill that was owed to them for something, that they had agreed on, but the other spouse didn't live up to. So in their mind, they have this like mental invoice. There's no paper invoice. It's just a mental invoice based on an agreement. And then they let that one thing derail an agreement. And really that $2,000 is like 0.05% of like the whole deal. So, that's where it helps to have professionals to come in and look at your situation and give some unbiased advice or like observations almost to point that out, because time is money. Like the more you fight about those things which are really insignificant in the big picture, the more money it's going to cost you and the more time it's going to take. So I just thought I would add that.
No, and that's so brilliant. And I think that, one thing that we've seen and we were able to avoid was the cost of a long, drawn out divorce, and the amount of money that gets wasted if you have it or not. It's irrelevant, right? It's still a chunk of money that should go to your kids. But with collaborative, I don't know any advice that the three of you can give people watching or who will watch about ways to not go down that rabbit hole and is it being forthright, fair? What can people do to maybe avoid, Christina, unfortunately use you as the do not, but what you had to avoid and so that money can go towards the kids. Okay. Who's that?
Well, I mean, I would say, I hammer this point home every week, which is, do the emotional work to clean up your shit, clean up your blame and resentments, like do all the inventory work that you need to do so that you're not carrying around resentments when it goes into the legal and financial decision making, because as I always say, right, you're making the biggest legal and financial decisions of your entire life in the middle of the biggest emotional upheaval of your life. And it is a terrible combination. So do the emotional work, like do it deep, do it real. And before you hit all the financial stuff, and it's going to be so much better. Yeah.
And it was kind of a loaded question, actually, because, one thing that I heard you two talking about on the podcast that Christina said is giving dads, men or women or both some time, to figure things out for themselves and to not make these emotional. I know for me, I was in no spot. I would not make any other decision in my life in the position I was in. I would never have started a business in the emotional state that I was in. So why would I go through and start a divorce process in the emotional state I was? So I needed time, and Nikki was generous enough to give me the time,
hoping that he would come to his senses and stop being such a jackass.
Yeah, she was hoping I'd come back to her is what she was really hoping.
No.
But but I needed that time because without it was there's no way that those decisions that need to be made can be done without what you just said, Kate. So, Susan, I don't know if you have anything.
Well, I did, and it actually goes back to something Christina said earlier, because I find that many people who are going through divorce skip over this step as well. So we've talked about collecting the information about what your pie is, but so many people do not know, as Christina said earlier about her own divorce, don't know their budget, don't know what things cost, and don't do anything to get on top of that. So they kind of let the divorce unfold in this vacuum of not really knowing what they actually need, and then get it. It's done, right? They think it's just going to happen and they're going to get here's my least favorite word as an attorney, fair.
Yeah.
Not FYI.
Yeah. Right.
I love the app.
Our favorite.
Not a big fan of the word in a legal sense, because what I think is fair is different from what Kate thinks is fair, is different from what Christina thinks is fair, and what everyone thinks is fair. Fair is for the birds. You want, you need to know as you're negotiating your divorce settlement, whether it be through mediation, collaborative, negotiating through your attorneys, or sitting down at the Starbucks table like you guys do. You need to know what your numbers are and what you need going forward so you can negotiate for that. And that's what someone like Christina does so well for people, and really should be brought in from the earliest days to help them with that, because it's not just quantifying the pie, it's your future as well. And you can't make good decisions about it emotionally if you don't do that work, as Kate said, but you also need to do the work to understand what your finances need to be going forward.
So Christina, is there a little bit of education that goes on? I mean, I imagine that you're part of the collaborative process, or can be, as a financial.
Actually, in my state, we don't have collaborative divorce. It's still working its way to the middle of the country, but I've been trained in it, and it's brilliant. And I would love to see divorce just move in that direction. I mean, it may not work in all cases, but I think like it's a good general platform.
So do you normally work with one party or both parties together?
So in my state, I can only work with one party. If I'm working out of state where there's collaborative divorce, then I can work with both parties. And ideally, that is a solution. You know, I love how you're solution oriented. And that is the solution. You bring in an expert third party who doesn't have any attachment to either spouse, knows how to get the numbers and do the projections and illustrations and make it easy to understand for everyone involved, and make suggestions of how to split this in both people's best interests.
Yeah, because when you were speaking about your, you started and you were eating rice out of beans out of a can and you had problems, and then you woke up and got divorced and you realized you had gold-plated problems. Right. And what happened, what happened in between those, the time. So part of it I would think would just need to be an education, and let's lay it all out there. Let's not go have, the IRS guy with his, pocket protector go and forensically account for, try to find let's throw it all out on the table. And here it is. And let's educate it. I mean, it just, to me, that seems like the right way to go instead of, the IRS pocket protector guy.
And I feel like that's what you guys are doing. You're changing an industry, really, and I love it. I keep going. I want to see this change for the better.
Kate or Susan, I know you guys have experience with collaborative. Nikki and I did, and we did collaborative. I don't remember. I don't think it's part of the statute in Florida at the time. I don't remember a forensic person there or a family therapist there. I know we had to go see somebody, but anyways, it might have been, might not have been. But what role does that financial planner play in today's collaborative process?
Well, for me, I use financial professionals both in, I don't do collaborative anymore, but mediation, I have, right. But I use them in mediation as well. I call it integrative teams for mediation. I have a mediation going right now with a couple who truly want to figure out their financial picture in a way that lets them achieve the goals that they want for their two daughters. And there's enough money that will do that, but it's complicated. There's a lot of businesses, there's a couple of houses. And so they agreed, and we brought in a financial neutral, someone, just as Christina was talking about when she works outside of her state, and she can do that. And the parties are sitting with, I'm not even there. They're sitting with the financial professional who's doing budgets for them about things going forward, looking at the cash flow for the couple of businesses. And he's going to make suggestions and recommendations to help them achieve in a neutral way what they're trying to do, because they didn't have the financial background to do that themselves. And it's like as she just said, it's the perfect scenario, because they're sitting there at a table with someone who does know, who knows what information to get from them. And then I'm going to come in as their mediator and the scrivener of their agreement and effectuate that for them and help them work out the legal details and agreements that they need to do. And it kind of reminds me of what you two did, sitting at the Starbucks table and then coming to agreements together, but then going to your professionals to work out the details on what you had agreed to.
Which is, something I wanted to, Christina, I don't know if you, either through your experience or your profession, I mean, one thing that Nikki and I did, and again, we are not lawyers, we are not professionals, we're not PhDs in forensic or financial planning. We're not that smart. Or anything close. We way
You're
underachieved.
All amazing.
we way underachieved. But is in your experience or through your professional experience, do you recommend the couples sit down first without the lawyer, without the forensic, without and see at least where they agree first?
Yeah. I mean, my personal experience that didn't work. So I think it is a case by case basis. But yeah, if you have two reasonable people, absolutely try to figure things out. I do think that there's a need for professional help for attorneys, and financial professionals, for divorce coaches. This is such a huge transition that I just think DIYing is tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, to get a baseline, why not? I don't know if Kate or Susan, if you guys have different opinions about that.
I will say that the further I get from my divorce, right, and the longer I am, the further away I get from it. We did a lot of it very collaboratively and very sort of off the cuff, and like we had a financial guy, and he was very clear. He was one of those financial guys, though, that did not speak in terms that regular people could understand, like you said, Christina. So we basically never knew what the fuck he was talking about. Oh. And I will say that the further I get away from my divorce, the more I wish I had you or someone like you, because we never did like a specific budget. It was just like, hey, what number feels good? Like, the amount of child or spousal support that one gets should not be a number that kind of feels good.
Right.
Well, we'd like a number that feels good.
Well, we would. Right. Sure. We would like.
Problem is,
but that's like fair, right? That's the fair, right? What feels good to you might not feel good to me.
Right. And so, while I talk about this a lot about how my house was, and we've talked about this, Christina, and the more I think about it, our house. We got divorced right after the financial collapse. So our house was underwater by like $250,000. Oh. And so I was going to have to pay him $125,000 for the privilege of leaving my house. And he was like, that's not fair. Like, let's just take the house off the top and we'll divide everything below that line, which at the time seemed very kind and generous and fair, except that he just sold the house for a $350,000 profit, of which I got none.
See, that's what I'm saying. So the shadiness just will never. I mean, if you want to have at least a shot at a, you guys came around and it worked out, but I mean, like that is just a shot across the bow. Once you found that out, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah. That happened. That happened like in the last 6 months, and I was like, huh. And I told him, I was like, you realize you basically got away with murder, right? I was like, you realize what happened here? And he's like, well, I paid, he paid the mortgage for 10 years and he put a new roof on the house and all new plumbing and all those things, right? And I don't know, like, you can't project those things, but I think, Susan, did we talk about this? It was like pre-financial collapse divorce and then post-financial, like we learned a lot.
Well, let me just bring something up there. I mean, with not getting into your business, but he did assume the risk at the time of taking on the underwater $250,000 house.
He did.
And so,
he did 100%. Nobody in Los Angeles thought that housing prices weren't going to go up again. We all knew they were going to go up again, and we knew he wasn't going to be selling the house when it was a liability, right? And he did. He assumed the risk. I'm not saying that what he did was wrong but I think now, like you said, Susan, things are different now, right? There's different language that we are now able to use. Like, if this happens, we have more of a sort of a history of these projections and stuff like that, right? So,
and we would probably be looking, just to play devil's advocate for a second, if you had wanted to stay around for an upside, then there would have been questions of how would title continue to be held for the 10 years? Was there going to be a date that it had to be sold by? Were you going to contribute to the mortgage, the upkeep, the new roof, and all of that? Because if you're expecting money out of the property, what are you going to contribute in however long? So it does raise a lot of other issues. But yes, that was a particular period of time, by the way, that divorces became very complicated. I actually got divorced I got divorced 3 days after 9/11 hit. and the stock market was closed. And thankfully, I'll just say this, I took the cash accounts, my ex took the stock. And on Monday, I was in a lot better situation than he was when they reopened the market. But those were things, nobody knew to plan for at those times. It's changed now.
Right.
And I think Christina could say, there's more modeling and ability to look. But some of it is just, it's the market and it's the way things,
Timing. I mean, right?
Yeah.
At some point, right.
And I guess my point about this is that I wish I had someone, a little bit more rigorous on my side to go through the stuff. And when you're doing collaborative, you're sort of relying on this one financial person. But I guess I also wish I had someone who spoke more English than money. But I do. I wish I had someone like Christina in my corner going through it and making the budgets and making the projections a lot more clearly.
So Christina, when somebody is getting divorced, why, what would you do if you get a call, and your process of how you work and also in that, how they can get in touch with you and reach out and where are you located?
Sure. Well, physically, I am in South Dakota, in the middle of the state or the country. But I didn't want to assume. That's actually from Minnesota.
I was going to say Minnesota.
You're a Minnesotan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is one of the most attractive accents. I'll have you know. But anyway, I do work across the nation. I'm licensed to do that. So anyway, okay, how you work with a certified divorce financial planner. You get in touch with them just no matter what stage you are at in the divorce process. Typically somebody can help you no matter where you're at. I think that, we're all trying to save a dime because divorce is so expensive just in and of itself. You're cutting your net worth in half, you're paying for an attorney, and you don't want to pay a financial planner on top of that. But let me tell you, it is worth its weight in gold because all these things that we've been talking about, a financial planner can help you with, and it changes the game. With a certified divorce financial analyst who understands the nuances of divorce finances, it's a game changer. Believe me, I love budgeting, and you should be including it in your budget.
So it's funny because with present company excluded with my lawyer, but I used to call my lawyer and she would go, "How are you feeling?" And I would say, with all due respect, leave her name out of it, but if I want to talk to somebody about my feelings, I'll call my therapist who charges me $125 an hour compared to $500 an hour. And I don't mean to be a dick, but let's talk about, Nikki in my case, so the short, I guess, cost is talk about the forest through the trees, how much money they save in the long run using a planner. So what if you could give somebody watching or listening or whatever they're doing a tip from what you see every day, what would that be? Maybe two.
Okay, that's really great. Let's talk about credit probably credit would be up there, is important. And it's not something that you see immediately after the divorce or in the divorce process. It's kind of one of those ghosts that haunts you years later. Yeah. So this is just crucial that when you get divorced, you need to separate all of your stuff there should be no more joint accounts. You need to run a credit report. For the record, a credit report is different than a credit score. So even if you see your credit score on your credit card statement, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is like a 20-page document that comes from one of 3 credit bureaus. And it's not fun to read, but it's just crucial that you look this up and you read it, because I've just seen time and time again that something was forgotten about. And I have my own story with that. Like, I didn't realize that I never returned an internet modem to CenturyLink from Arizona years later. That's still on my credit report. And so, and then I've seen crazy things, related to the divorce, things that, was the spouses, and they had been told that they were taking care of that, or they didn't have any idea about it. The only way to know about those like financial ghosts is to run a credit report and look at it. And this isn't something that you should like pay someone online to like for a service, because I mean, I don't know. There may be some great services out there, but I think
go directly to Experian TransUnion, or was it Experian TransUnion?
Yeah. Yep. And in
Equifax.
the divorce, yeah, exactly. And get your credit report. It's free once a year. So sign up and get it done. And
so legally, Susan, when it's something I don't know, I'm just asking for my own knowledge, but as far as credit, if you have bad credit and you're married, the couple together has bad credit, but once they split with their own.
Yeah, credit is specific to the individual person.
Okay, yeah.
So, but that is an issue, because very often the process of divorce will very negatively affect people's credit situations. The situation we were talking about earlier, where one spouse cuts off the other party's access to funds, then that person can't make their credit card payments or their car payment. I've seen cases where people both stay on the mortgage, and one of them's supposed to contribute but never makes the payment. I mean, there's so many different ways. So what Christina just said about making sure that that you separate everything out, if you can. There are certain instances where we just can't separate something out, but you have to put in as much as you can to try and protect the credit. I mean, there's language we actually put in there that if someone's responsible for making a payment that's going to and they can't make it, and it's going to negatively affect the other person's credit, they have to notify them, so at least they can make the payment,
right,
and then get reimbursed, because it's that important. Yeah. To keep your credit high, because it takes forever, right, Christina, to get it back up?
Like 7 years.
When you need it, right? After a divorce, like, you're reestablishing yourself. You need credit.
Yeah.
We have a question that I from Facebook. I am not going to read it. Nikki's going to read it, and I can't put it on the screen because it's a little too long and it'll cover all of our faces. So, Nikki, why don't you go ahead?
Who is the best advisor to help in crafting the most tax efficient and equitable split of all assets? Is that part of what the CDFA does? How do we find one? Are attorneys open to working with one?
Great question.
There you go.
So certified financial planners are like that's kind of the gold standard in financial advising. But in this case, you do want a certified divorce financial analyst, because they understand the divorce. Like, there's just specific things that go on with divorce that certified financial planners aren't trained on. So in the best of both worlds, you'd have both. So actually, I am one. If you're looking for one, the best would be a CFP, a certified financial planner, and a certified divorce financial analyst. So you kind of have both of the trainings, but you should not forego the certified divorce financial analyst. You can go to the Institute for Divorce Financial Analysis. There you can type in your zip code and they'll pop up the ones in your area. I work nationwide, and I'm sure that other ones work nationwide as well. So you're not limited to the state that you work in.
Well, you're with us. So part of the thing, how do we get your contact info?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. It's Christina.Lynn.Thrivent. So send me a message. I'd be more than happy to give you a free consult on that. And what else?
Because the woman who asked that question is in our group. You can find Christina in our Facebook group.
Yeah.
Look at you.
I know that, like, so you can find Christina in our group, and also I recommend Christina all the time. So
I love you, Kate.
So Amy has another question from the Facebook. group.
What if your partner is not forthcoming with information and is very passive aggressive?
So we sort of touched on that, but Kate, why don't you take that one?
Poke his eyeballs out.
You mean, is this about finances?
Yeah, I would imagine.
Forthcoming with information. I mean, you may have to hire a forensic accountant. Like if they're hiding shit, I don't know. I mean, I would actually
poke his eyes out, then hire an accountant. No, I'm kidding.
The Italian. Susan, what I mean, is this something with they're not being forthcoming? Is that there's nothing really that can be done except for forensic accounting, or is there something that we can do in the interim?
A forensic accountant's great, but a forensic accountant can't do anything until they have the financial information, right? That's what a forensic accountant does. A forensic accountant comes in and literally pores over all the financial records to come up with the financial trail, right? What we were talking about earlier about there's always a paper trail. As an example, I will get all the credit card statements and the bank statements because someone says they're making this much, but their lifestyle shows they're living this lifestyle. So that's what the forensic accountant does. But if the person is not giving their financial information, if they're not giving the tax returns, the credit card statements, the bank statements, the pay stubs, et cetera, that is a discovery issue. Every divorce there's a requirement. I don't care what state you're in. There's a requirement of a free and open exchange of financial information. It's usually defined by that state's either laws or regulations. And we often find people who don't go along with or are not forthcoming. And that's where, unfortunately, you have to go through the court system to compel that disclosure or issue subpoenas to the banks directly, to the credit card companies directly. Either way is unfortunately expensive. You can ask for sanctions and things like that. But that's why one of the things Kate said earlier, I think is important. Before the divorce, if you have access to start gathering some of that information, you will save yourself a lot of time and money if you can provide the CDFA, the forensic accountant, your attorney, and everyone with that information. So knowing the passwords, knowing all of that, that's a worst case scenario. I mean, the law is based upon people being forthcoming, but unfortunately, I can tell you they are not always.
Right. Yeah, I'll just say that I have a client who, before telling, it was part of our strategy was before she had the conversation, before she dropped the bomb, when he was out or napping or whatever, she was in the office scanning every document that she could get access to because she knew that once she told him, all bets are off. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you have to be that, you got to do that.
So Christina, thank you very much for joining us. I promise everybody that we won't go after over an hour. It's in Kate and Susan, and especially this one's contract.
I was just going to say, I see Nikki going, it's almost time.
Yeah, she's going tick, 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 tick.
I told you I'm already in my pajamas.
But a big round of applause for Nikki for joining us. It's only been 5-6 weeks.
5 weeks, but I was gone.
The rumors were flying. But Christina, thank you so much, and thank you for turning your story into something so positive for people. And that's what Nikki and I are doing, and I think Kate and Susan, all of us have our experiences, and that's why we're here on a Monday night, trying to help people out. But tell them one more time how they can get in touch with you.
Reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook, christina.lynn.thrivein.
Okay. And in case you where are we?
Can I say just one thing? Because
Absolutely.
There was one other question Beth asked about, are attorneys open to working with CDFAs? If your attorney is not open to working with a CDFA, get the CDFA and get a different attorney. Because love working with CDFAs. Your attorney is a member of your team and should be there to support you. And one more person on the team who can help support you is exactly the way the world should be. So you just remember one thing, and if this is Beth or anybody else, your attorney works for you, not the other way around.
Spoken from attorney.
Right.
And with that, I think we're going to start a new close of the show, and Susan's going to tuck everybody in with words of wisdom, because that was it. We are done here. Thank you all very much.
Thanks for having me.
And have
Bye.
Thank you for joining us.